Setting: Manhattan, New York City, in a very kept-up office with a view most would find stunning. A well-kept man with smooth skin and slick-back hair is sitting at his desk. Patrick Bateman is his name. As Patrick is reading the latest numbers from an investment that his father bought from a thick stack of paper, his assistant walks in. "Gene, what is it now? I'm really busy," says Patrick. "Your father asked me to give you this letter." Gene responds. Patrick quickly opens the letter. The letter explains. "Patrick, I'm going out of town for 2 weeks. There is a property I've kept an eye on for a few months. I know it's a little different than what you're usually up to, but I need you to travel to California and start negotiations with the owner. The owner is an oddball named Norman Bates, but he seems ready to sell the place. He seems sick of the place. It's off a highway in Fairvale. You can't miss it." Patrick does not seem happy about the situation. He has never wanted to like the West. Patrick yells at Gene, "Gene, I want you to come with me to California, strictly business," he says with a grin on his face. 3 days later, Patrick and Gene land in Southern California. A long black limo is waiting outside the airport. An old white man is waiting at the back door with a small white piece of paper that says Patrick Bateman. "Hi, Mr. Bateman. I'll be taking you to the Bates Motel." Says Patrick. "What can you tell me about the Bates Motel?" "The owner's a wacko. Killed his mom and a few girls years back. But those are just rumors," says the driver. Sounds like my Friday afternoon," says Patrick. It was a short 20-minute drive to the Bates Motel. The limo pulls into a small parking lot. It's raining more than Patrick has seen in a while. A light saying vacancy flickers on the big sign. Bankman has arrived at the Bates Motel. Patrick walks into a room with a desk and a logbook. He rings the bell on the desk. After no answer, Patrick rings the bell multiple times, yelling, "Paying customer here." After a few minutes, he sees an old man walking down a long path coming from a huge house headed towards the motel. "Hey there, I'm Norman," says the man. "Patrick," he says with a smile. "I'm here to buy this dump," he says, continuing to smile. "This is no dump, mister. Me and my mom have ran this place for as long as I can remember." "Sorry," said Bateman. Norman then looks at Gene. "Well, hi there, missus." "Can I get a room?" Patrick interrupted. "Then maybe after dinner we can discuss the sale." Norman grabs a logbook, opens it, laying it in front of Patrick, handing him a pen. "Ha, no thanks," Patrick said loudly, as he grabbed a nicer, more expensive pen from inside his jacket pocket. Patrick then looks at the logbook. "No business? There's no names on here." "It's been a rough couple months," Norman says sternly. Patrick then proceeds to write his name, then hands the pen to Jean. Jean writes her name under Patrick. Norman smiles and turns around to he grabs key number 1 and key number 3. He hands key 1 to Jean and key number 3 to Peter. "Well, I'm going to head to my room." He exits the room and walks down 3 doors to his room and walks in. He slams the door behind him, throws his bag. Peter began to look around his room, opening drawers and looking into the bathroom. He hears a loud laugh coming from the check-in room. He walks back and peeks through the window. Norman and Jean are still talking. Jean is bent over the desk, very close to Norman's face, smiling. Patrick then walks into the room with a grin and says, "Hey, Norman, didn't you kill some girls way back in the day? And your mother?" "Now, mister," says Mr. Bates. Patrick interrupts. "What? You didn't think we would know?" he says, giggling. "There's a place for you, and it's hell," he yells while he pulls out a knife and leaps towards Bates. Bates tries to move the other way, but Patrick grabs him and continuously stabs him in the stomach. Jean screams in horror. Peter, covered in blood, looks at Jean from the floor, holding the head of Bates. He grabs Jean before she could run out of the room and slits her throat and watches all the blood fly over the wall ceiling and fall to the floor. "Well, I ought to be headed to my room. It was nice talking to you." Patrick snaps back to reality and quickly runs to his room. Yeah, Miss Jean, you too." "Are you sure? I could always grab you a drink and maybe some dinner. I know y'all must be hungry," says Norman. "Sorry, I have to get to my room and get some sleep, but thank you." Jean proceeds to her room and throws her bag on the bed and lays next to it. Only seconds later, she hears a knock at the door. Jean gets up and peeks through the peephole of the door. It's Patrick. Jean opens the door as Patrick pushes past her and sits on the bed. "Well, I thought since we were stuck here, we could get to know each other a little better," Patrick says. "Yeah, sure," says Jean, while she starts to blush. "What were you thinking?" "Well, you get dressed up and please put some makeup on, and we'll head into town and see if there's a nice restaurant nearby. How does that sound?" "Great," she says. "Great," Patrick repeats to Jean. "I'll be back to get you in about an hour. I have some stuff to handle." Patrick leaves the room and walks back towards the office, peeking through the window to see Bates, but Bates was gone. He notices a door and cracks it open just to peek inside. It's empty, but the walls are covered in taxidermy animals. "Weird," says Patrick. He enters the room and takes a seat next to the wall. But when he sits, the chair falls backwards and Patrick hits his head on the wall. At that moment, a picture falls and reveals a big hole in the wall. Patrick gets up, peeks through the hole. He sees Jean in the shower. He continues to watch when all of a sudden he hears the door open. He sees a woman-like figure headed towards the bathroom. The shadowy figure raises her hand and reveals a knife as it slashes a downward motion followed by a loud scream. Patrick keeps watching as Jean is stabbed repeatedly. The lady then starts headed towards the door to leave. Patrick runs out of the room, out of the office, and is face to face with Norman Bates, dressed as an old lady. He is wearing a silver wig and a blue dress with white dots all over it. Norman then raises his arm and begins to charge towards Patrick. Patrick, frozen in belief, is stabbed in the chest. Patrick then pushes Norman into the office and runs towards his room. Patrick quickly searches his bag and finds a small nail gun he bought just in case. Patrick grabs the gun, but is grabbed at the same time as turning around. He is stabbed once more in the stomach. Blood begins running out of Patrick's mouth. As Patrick falls, he raises the nail gun and shoots Norman twice in the chest, with one nail going directly in Norman's eye. Norman turns around to run out of the room and runs directly into the wall, shoving the nail further into his eye. As Norman falls and screams in pain, Patrick crawls over to Norman, his arm on his shoulder. He puts the nail gun up to Norman's face, shoots another time. Norman's body falls back lifeless. Patrick sits back, letting his back rest against the wall. Patrick grins and starts to laugh as he feels his life slipping away from him. Hours later, a tall blonde woman parks her car just in front of the office. She enters and rings the bell. No answer. After mentally ringing the bell, she leaves the office and heads to her car. As she opens her driver door, she sees that door number 1 is open. She enters slowly and is met with horror.